She was left to die so the pack could live. The chains bit into Ilara's wrists, iron cold against skin already numb from the blizzard. They had bound her to the stone pillar at the edge of the territory, where the mountain wind howled loudest and the snow fell like knives. The elders said her barrenness was a curse, that the goddess had marked her unworthy, that her very presence poisoned the fertility of the pack's women. So they chained her outside. "May the storm take what we cannot keep," the Beta had said, his voice steady, his eyes empty of mercy. Ilara had not begged. What words could she offer to those who measured worth in bloodlines and births? She was 23 winters old and had never felt the quickening of life within her. In a world where omegas existed to carry the future, she was nothing but failure wrapped in skin. The wind tore at her thin dress, the fabric already stiff with ice. Her dark hair whipped across her face, strands freezing to her cheeks. She could no longer feel her feet. The moon hid behind the storm clouds, and she wondered if even the goddess had turned away. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time lost meaning when death waited in every gust. Then, through the white curtain of snow, she saw movement. A figure emerged from the blizzard, massive and cloaked in furs, so dark they seemed to drink the light. He moved with the deliberate grace of a predator, each step purposeful, despite the storm that would have felled lesser men. As he drew closer, Ilara saw the glint of silver armor beneath the pelts, the ancient markings of a king's guard. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gold, burning gold, like embers in the dark. The Alpha King stopped 3 paces from her, his gaze moving from her face to the chains, to the frozen ground beneath her bare feet. His expression remained unreadable, carved from the same stone as the mountains around them. "Who did this?" His voice was low, a rumble beneath the wind. Ilara's lips were too frozen to form words. She could only stare. He stepped forward, and she smelled pine and smoke and something wild, something that made her wolf stir for the first time in months. With one hand, he gripped the chains. His eyes flared brighter, and the iron groaned, then shattered. She collapsed forward. He caught her before she hit the ground, his arms impossibly warm, impossibly steady. "You're coming with me," he said, and there was no question in his voice, only certainty. Ilara tried to speak, to ask why, to understand what game of fate had brought a king to her execution. But consciousness was slipping, the cold finally claiming what it had been denied. The last thing she felt was the heat of his chest against her cheek, the steady rhythm of his heart, and the inexplicable sense that she had been found by someone who had been searching far longer than this single night. When she woke, she would learn his name was Matthias, that he ruled the northern kingdoms with justice tempered by sorrow, that he had lost his mate to childbirth 3 years prior and had wandered the borders ever since, unable to return to a throne that felt like a tomb. When she woke, she would learn that he had been praying for a sign, any sign, that mercy still had meaning in a world ruled by strength and survival. When she woke, she would learn that the barren Omega and the grieving king had been drawn together by something older than pack law, older than shame. But for now, in his arms, as he carried her away from the pillar and the chains and the pack that had condemned her, Ilara simply felt warm. And for the first time in her life, she felt chosen. The storm raged on behind them, but Matthias walked through it as if it were nothing more than wind. His fortress lay 2 days north, built into the mountain itself, a place where old laws still held and compassion had not yet frozen solid. He did not know why he had come to this particular border at this particular hour. He knew only that something had pulled him here, a whisper beneath his thoughts, a tug in his chest that he had learned not to ignore. The goddess worked in circles, not lines. What seemed like an ending was often a threshold. As dawn broke pale and silver over the peaks, Matthias carried Ilara into the shelter of the forest, where the wind could not reach and the snow fell soft instead of sharp. He would not stop until she was safe. He would not question the rightness of this choice. Some things, he had learned, could only be understood by doing them. And some people could only be saved by those who had also needed saving. The fortress rose from the mountain like a crown of stone and ice, its towers sharp against the gray sky. Matthias carried Ilara through gates that opened without command, past guards who bowed without question. They knew better than to ask why their king returned from his wandering with a half-frozen Omega in his arms. They had learned long ago that Matthias moved according to laws they could not see. He brought her to the eastern tower, to chambers that had once belonged to his younger sister before she married into the western plains. The room was warm, lit by a fire that never seemed to diminish, lined with furs and tapestries that softened the stone. He laid Ilara on the bed and stepped back, studying her face in the firelight. She was small, even for an Omega. Dark hair fell in tangled waves across the pillow, and her skin held the pallor of prolonged cold. But there was something in the line of her jaw, the set of her mouth even in unconsciousness, that spoke of resilience. "Fetch Mira," he told the guard at the door, "and tell her to bring feverfew and winter sage." Mira arrived within minutes, the pack healer who had served his family for 40 years. She asked no questions, only set to work with practiced efficiency, examining Ilara's hands and feet for frostbite, listening to her heartbeat, checking the bruises that darkened her wrists where the chains had held. "She'll live," Mira said finally, mixing herbs into hot water. "But she's been starved, not for days, for months. They were killing her slowly before they chained her to that pillar." Matthias's jaw tightened. "Can you tell why?" Mira glanced at him, her eyes knowing. "She's barren. I can smell it on her. The hormones are wrong. Her wolf is muted." She paused. "In some packs, that's death without the mercy of quickness." "Not here. No, sire, not here." When Mira left, Matthias pulled a chair beside the bed and sat. He should return to the council chambers, to the endless disputes and decisions that defined a king's day. But he found himself unable to leave, as if some invisible thread tied him to this room, to this stranger who had looked at him through the storm with eyes that held no hope and somehow all of it at once. He had not felt this pull since Lyanna died. The thought should have brought guilt, but it brought only recognition. This was not replacement. This was not forgetting. This was something else entirely. Something he had no name for yet. Ilara stirred as the sun reached its peak, a weak light filtering through the high windows. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening with confusion and fear. "Where?" Her voice cracked, dry as ancient paper. Matthias reached for the water Mira had left on the table. "You're safe. Drink." She pushed herself up with visible effort, accepting the cup with trembling hands. She drank carefully, studying him over the rim. When she finished, she lowered the cup and met his gaze directly. "You're the Alpha King." Not a question. "Matthias crowned in winter." "Yes." "Why did you save me?" It was the question he had been asking himself since dawn. He could offer her the practical answer, the political one, the merciful one, but something in her eyes demanded truth, not comfort. "I don't know," he said. "I was walking the borders. I heard nothing, saw nothing, but I knew I needed to be there. When I found you—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. It felt like answering a question I'd been asking for 3 years. Ilara's expression shifted, something unreadable crossing her features. "You lost your mate. How did you know?" "Everyone knows. The Alpha King who walks alone, who rules justly but cannot bear to sit on his throne for more than an hour at a time." She looked down at her hands, at the bandages Mira had wrapped around her wrists. "They said you died with her, in all the ways that matter." "They weren't wrong," Matthias leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "What's your name?" "Alara. Alara of the Ashwood Pack. Or I was." Bitterness crept into her voice. "Now I'm nothing of anywhere." "You're Alara of the Northern Kingdom, if you choose." She looked up sharply. "I don't understand." "I'm offering you sanctuary, a place in my household. No chains, no judgment for what you cannot give." He held her gaze. "All I ask is that you stay until you're strong enough to decide your own path. And if you choose to leave then, I'll give you coin and safe passage anywhere you wish to go." Alara stared at him, searching his face for deception or hidden cost. She found only steady patience. "Why?" she asked again, softer this time. "Because mercy is all we have left when justice fails," Matthias said. "And because I think the goddess sent you to remind me of that." 3 days passed before Alara could walk without trembling. Mira brought her meals that she struggled to finish, her stomach shrunken from months of rationed scraps. Matthias visited each evening, staying only long enough to ensure she had what she needed, never pressing her to speak when silence suited her better. On the 4th day, Alara left her chambers. The fortress was a maze of stone corridors and winding stairs, but she followed the sound of voices to the central hall. It was a vast space, the ceiling lost in shadow despite the fires that burned in iron braziers along the walls. Long tables filled the room, and wolves of all ranks ate together, their laughter and arguments filling the air with life. She stood in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. In her pack, Omegas ate separately, always last, always least. "Alara." Matthias's voice came from her left. He stood near one of the fires, dressed in simple wool and leather, looking more like a warrior than a king. "Come, sit." He gestured to a seat at the high table, not beside him, but not far. A place of honor she had not earned. She crossed the hall, feeling the weight of curious eyes. Whispers followed her, some kind, some skeptical, but no one spoke against her presence. When she reached the table, Matthias pulled out the chair himself. "Thank you," she murmured, sitting. A woman with silver-streaked hair and a warrior's scars brought her a plate of roasted venison and winter vegetables. "Eat, little one. Mira says you need your strength." Alara ate slowly, aware of how strange this was, how impossible. A Barren Omega eating at a king's table while warriors and nobles treated her as if she belonged. "They're staring," she said quietly. "They're curious," Matthias replied. "You're the first person I've brought back from my wanderings in 3 years. They wonder what you are to me." "What am I to you?" He considered the question, his golden eyes reflecting firelight. "I don't know yet, but I think you're here to teach me something I've forgotten." Before Alara could respond, a disturbance erupted near the main doors. A messenger burst through, snow still clinging to his cloak, his expression urgent. "Sire, the Ashwood Pack Alpha requests an audience. He's at the gates with 20 warriors." The hall fell silent. Alara's blood turned cold. "Garrett." Matthias looked at her. "Your Alpha?" "The one who chained me to the pillar." Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. "He's come to finish what the storm didn't." Matthias stood, his presence filling the space in a way that made every wolf turn toward him. "Tell Alpha Garrett I will see him in the council chamber, alone." He glanced at his beta, a scarred man named Rowan. "Double the guard on the eastern tower. No one enters except Mira." "Sire," Rowan began. "Do it." As Matthias turned to leave, Alara caught his arm. "He'll demand my return. He'll say I'm pack property, that you have no right to keep me." "He can demand whatever he wishes," Matthias said, his voice cold as the mountain wind. "But pack law ends at my borders, and I do not return wolves to those who would kill them." He left the hall with Rowan at his side, moving with the deliberate calm of a predator who has already decided how the hunt will end. Alara sat frozen, the food turning to ash in her mouth. Around her, the warriors resumed their meals, but their hands stayed close to their weapons, and their conversations carried the edge of readiness. Mira appeared at her shoulder. "Come, back to your chambers. I want to know what happens." "You will, but not by standing in the line of fire." The healer's voice gentled. "Trust him, child. Matthias did not survive 20 years as king by letting bullies take what's his. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments of the night they find you. The council chamber was built for intimidation. High ceilings, cold stone, and a single throne carved from black mountain granite. Matthias sat upon it now, every inch the Alpha King, while Garrett paced before him like a caged wolf. "She is Ashwood property," Garrett growled. "You have no claim to her." "She is a wolf who sought sanctuary in my territory," Matthias replied, his voice level, "and I have every claim to offer protection to those who request it. She's barren, cursed. Her presence weakens the pack." "Her presence weakens nothing but your pride." Matthias leaned forward slightly. "You chained her to die because you feared what her existence said about your leadership. That's not pack law. That's murder dressed in tradition." Garrett's eyes flashed dangerously. "You call me murderer? You who let your own mate die in childbirth?" The room temperature dropped. Rowan's hand moved to his sword, but Matthias raised one finger, stopping him. "My mate died bringing life into this world," Matthias said softly, each word precise as a blade. "You tried to kill a woman for failing to do the same. We are not the same, Garrett. And if you speak of Lyanna again, I will teach you the difference between grief and cowardice personally." Garrett stepped back, reassessing. He had come expecting intimidation to work both ways, but he had miscalculated. The grieving king was still a king, and his mercy had limits. "What do you want?" Garrett asked finally. "Nothing from you. You'll return to Ashwood territory and forget Alara exists. In return, I won't send word to the Council of Alphas about your creative interpretation of pack justice. She's worthless. Then you've lost nothing." Garrett's jaw clenched. He knew he had no leverage, no allies in this frozen fortress. "If she returns voluntarily, she won't. You can't know that. I know that wolves who have tasted freedom rarely return to chains." Matthias stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "Go home, Garrett. Tend to the pack you still have, and pray the goddess is more forgiving than I am." Garrett left with his warriors, their departure marked by threats muttered too low for formal insult, but loud enough for pride. Matthias watched from the tower window as they disappeared into the forest, 20 shapes swallowed by snow and shadow. "He'll come back," Rowan said. "Maybe, but not soon, and not without a better plan." Matthias turned from the window. "How is she?" "Scared, trying not to show it. Bring her to the library. It's time we talked honestly." The library was Matthias's favorite room in the fortress, walls lined with books and scrolls collected over generations, the air thick with the scent of old paper and pipe smoke. He was standing by the fire when Alara entered, Mira guiding her gently before retreating. Ilara stopped just inside the doorway, her eyes darting to the exits, calculating escape routes even here. "He's gone," Matthias said, "and he won't be back. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise that if he tries, he'll learn why this kingdom has held for 300 years. He gestured to a chair near the fire. "Sit, please." She sat, perched on the edge as if ready to flee. Matthias took the chair across from her, maintaining distance, making himself smaller despite the impossibility of truly diminishing his presence. "Tell me about your gift," he said. Alara went still. "I don't have one. That's the problem." "I don't mean children. I mean your real gift. The one you've been hiding since you were old enough to know it made you dangerous." Her breath caught. How did you— Because I've spent 3 years learning to see what others miss. And I see you, Alara. The way you watch people. The way you know things you shouldn't. The way you found the library on your first day out of your chambers when it's hidden behind 3 false corridors. He leaned forward. You're a pathfinder. The word hung between them, ancient and forbidden. I don't know what you're talking about, Alara whispered. Yes, you do. You can sense truth from lies, find what's lost, see connections others miss. It's why your pack called you cursed. They couldn't control what you might discover about them. His voice gentled. I'm right, aren't I? Alara's hands twisted in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Since I was 7. I knew the beta's mate was betraying him before he did. I knew the alpha's son was stealing from the pack stores. I knew my own mother was sick before the healers found the cancer. She looked up, tears tracking down her cheeks. Knowing changes nothing. It only makes you dangerous to people who profit from secrets, or invaluable to those who value truth. Matthias held her gaze. I need a pathfinder, Ilara. This kingdom is vast, and lies grow like weeds in the cracks. If you're willing, I would make you my seeker. You would have protection, purpose, and power. Why would you trust me? Because 3 nights ago, I asked the goddess for a sign that redemption was still possible, and she sent me you. Winter deepened, and with it, Ilara's role in the fortress transformed. Matthias had not made her his seeker in name alone. Each morning she attended the council sessions, sitting at his right hand while nobles and warriors presented their disputes. At first, they resented her presence, this Barren Omega who had no right to such a position. Then she began to speak. Lord Hakan is lying about the border incursion, she said quietly during one session. His wolves crossed first. The Riverlands pack retaliated. Hakan sputtered protests, but Matthias only raised his hand. Ilara? I can feel it. The truth sits different than lies. His words are smooth, but there's a wrongness underneath, like meat gone bad beneath pretty wrapping. She met Hakan's furious gaze. You wanted their timber rights. You thought a small war would give you leverage to take them. The silence that followed was profound. Lord Hakan, Matthias said softly, you have 3 days to return the land you took and compensate the Riverlands pack for their losses, or I will declare you oath-broken and strip your title. Hakan left in rage, but he complied. Word spread quickly through the kingdom. The Alpha King had found himself a pathfinder, and lies would no longer shelter in his halls. But the gift took its toll. Ilara began having visions in the night, fragments of truth so sharp they cut. She would wake, gasping, knowing that a merchant was poisoning his competitor's goods, that a guard was selling information to bandits, that a noble's child would die if they traveled east during the new moon. Matthias found her in the library one night, bent over a map, her hands shaking. What did you see? He asked gently. The western border. There's going to be an attack, 3 days from now, at dawn. They're planning to burn the villages, take hostages. She looked up at him, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. I can see it so clearly. The smoke, the screaming, but I don't know how to stop it. Matthias knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her level. You've already stopped it by telling me. I'll send warriors tonight. We'll be waiting when they come. He took her hand carefully, as if she might break. But Ilara, you can't carry every truth alone. It will destroy you. What choice do I have? If I ignore it, people die. You share it. You let others bear the weight with you. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. You let me bear it with you. She wanted to pull away, to maintain the distance that had kept her safe her entire life. But she was so tired, and his hand was warm, and for the first time since she could remember, Someone was offering to share her burden instead of blaming her for it. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," Matthias admitted, "but we'll learn together." The attack came exactly as Alara had foreseen. Matthias's warriors were waiting, hidden in the forest, when the enemy pack struck. The battle was brief and decisive, the attackers routed before they could reach the villages. No innocents died, no homes burned. When Matthias returned, blood-spattered but uninjured, he found Alara standing in the courtyard, her face lifted to the snow that fell soft and constant. "You saved them," she said without turning. "We saved them." He stopped beside her, following her gaze to the dark sky. "Your gift, my action. That's how this works. In my pack, they would have called it witchcraft, burned me for it. In my kingdom, we call it prophecy, and we honor those who carry it." He was quiet for a moment. "Alara, I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, noting the unusual hesitation in his voice. "I've been feeling it too," he said. "The pull between us. It's not just gratitude or alliance. The goddess doesn't work that way." He took a breath. "I think she's offering us a second chance, both of us. But I need to know if you feel it as well, or if I'm seeing patterns in chaos, because I'm desperate to believe redemption is possible." Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She had felt it, of course. From the moment he had shattered her chains, she had felt the invisible thread drawing her to him. But she had told herself it was gratitude, circumstance, the natural bond between savior and saved. She had lied to herself because the truth was too dangerous. "I feel it," she admitted. "But Matthias, I can't give you what your mate did. I can't give you heirs, a legacy, any of the things a king needs." "I don't need heirs. I need a partner who sees truth and isn't afraid to speak it. I need someone who understands that strength isn't just power. It's also mercy." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. "I need you, Alara. Not your womb. You." The words broke something inside her, some wall she had built from years of being measured and found wanting. "What if I fail you?" she whispered. "What if we fail together?" he countered. "Isn't that better than succeeding alone?" She laughed, the sound wet with tears she hadn't realized were falling. "That's a terrible sales pitch for a queen. Then it's good I'm not asking you to be a queen. I'm asking you to be my mate, my equal, my pathfinder, and my redemption." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. "What do you say, Ilara of the Northern Kingdom? Will you take a chance on a broken king who's trying to remember how to be whole?" She looked into his golden eyes and saw her own fractured hope reflected back. "Yes," she breathed, "yes." When he kissed her, soft and reverent beneath the falling snow, the fortress bells began to ring without command, as if the stones themselves recognized that something sacred was being born in the cold. The mating ceremony took place under the full moon, in the ancient stone circle at the heart of the fortress. Tradition demanded witnesses, so the entire kingdom gathered, thousands of wolves filling the courtyard and spilling into the surrounding terraces. But for Alara, there was only Matthias, only the moment when he took her hand and spoke the old words with a voice that shook with something deeper than duty. "I bind myself to you, not in ownership but in partnership. I offer you my strength when yours falters, my truth when doubt clouds your path, my life as shield and shelter. What I am, I share with you. What you are, I honor completely." Alara repeated the vows, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was claiming. A Barren Omega becoming the mate of a king. It should have been impossible, a violation of every natural law. But the moon shone bright overhead, and when the pack howled their acceptance, the sound was not reluctant, but joyful. Mira stepped forward with the ceremonial bowl, the one used for royal matings for 3 centuries. Inside swirled a mixture of wine and blood, old magic that bound souls as well as lives. They drank together, and Alara felt the connection slam into place, a golden thread that tied her heart to his breath to hers. She gasped at the intensity, at the sudden awareness of his emotions, his thoughts, the shape of his soul. He felt broken and mended simultaneously, guilt and hope warring for dominance. But underneath it all was something solid and unchanging, his absolute conviction that this was right, that she was meant to be his, that the goddess had not abandoned them after all. When the ceremony ended, Matthias led her to the tower, to rooms that had been his alone for 3 years. He closed the door gently, shutting out the world, and turned to face her. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but not of you." "Of what then?" "Of waking up and finding this was a dream, of being sent back to the pillar, of discovering I'm not enough." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her cheek. "You are enough," he said fiercely. "You are more than enough, and I will spend every day proving that to you until you believe it." They made love slowly, carefully, learning each other's boundaries and needs. There was grief in it, for what they had both lost, but also joy, fierce and unexpected. When it was over, they lay tangled together in the firelight, and Alara felt, for the first time in her life, completely safe. "I have a confession," Matthias said, running his fingers through her hair. "I've been waiting for you since the day Liana died. I didn't know it was you specifically, but I knew there was someone. The goddess whispered it to me in my dreams, told me that loss wasn't the end, only transition, that I needed to hold on just a little longer." He kissed her forehead. "And then I found you chained in a storm, and everything made sense." Alara propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. "Do you think Liana would approve?" "I think Liana would be furious that I waited 3 years instead of living." He smiled sadly. "She used to tell me I thought too much about duty and not enough about joy. She would have liked you. You both had the same gift for seeing through my nonsense. I wish I could have known her. You know her through me. The best parts of who I am, she helped shape." He touched Alara's cheek. "And now you're helping me remember them." The weeks that followed were the happiest of Alara's life. She attended council meetings, helped Matthias navigate the political tangles of ruling, and used her gift to root out corruption and lies. The kingdom flourished under their combined leadership, disputes resolved fairly, justice served without cruelty. But happiness is never permanent when old grudges simmer. Garrett returned in the dead of winter, not with warriors this time, but with lawyers and scrolls, with ancient laws that predated the current kingdom. He demanded an audience with the Council of Alphas, claiming that Matthias had violated sacred pack law by sheltering stolen property. The council convened in the fortress. 12 Alphas from across the territories, each powerful enough to threaten Matthias's rule if they united against him. Garrett presented his case with cold precision. "The law is clear. An Omega who is pack-born remains pack property until death or formal release. Matthias interfered with Ashwood justice, stole what was rightfully ours, and elevated a Barren wolf to a position she has no natural claim to." He looked directly at Matthias. "I demand her return or formal censure of your kingdom." The chamber erupted in debate. Some Alphas agreed with Garrett, citing tradition and the sanctity of pack law. Others argued that Matthias had acted within his rights as sovereign ruler. The discussion grew heated, voices rising, hands moving to weapons. Matthias stood, and the room fell silent. "Before you decide my fate," he said quietly, "I ask that you allow Alara to speak, because this concerns her life, and she has a right to defend it." The Alphas agreed, curiosity overriding protocol. Alara stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. She looked at each Alpha in turn, then at Garrett, then at the assembled crowd. "I was not stolen," she said. "I was saved. There is a difference, though I understand why some of you cannot see it." She paused. "You want to know if I'm worthy of being a queen? Here is my answer. I am a pathfinder. I can see truth in lies, find what is lost, sense connections others miss. Matthias didn't elevate me out of pity. He elevated me because I'm useful. Because my gift serves this kingdom better than any ability to bear children ever would." She turned to Garrett. "You chained me to die because you feared what I might reveal about you. And you were right to fear. I know about the tributes you skim from your pack. I know about the wolves you've exiled for questioning your authority. I know about the deal you made with the Eastern Raiders to sell them safe passage through Ashwood territory in exchange for a cut of their plunder." Garrett's face went white, then red. "Lies. Prove it," Alara said coldly. "Submit to a truth reading. Let a neutral pathfinder examine your memories. If I'm lying, I'll return to Ashwood willingly. But if I'm not, you'll be stripped of your title and exiled as the criminal you are." The chamber went absolutely silent. Garrett looked around, seeing no allies, no escape. He had gambled everything on ancient law and lost it to simple truth. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. Garrett fled before the council could render judgment, vanishing into the wilderness with a handful of loyal warriors. The council formally dissolved his claim to Ashwood leadership and granted Matthias the right to appoint a new alpha. More importantly, they recognized Alara's position as legitimate, establishing a precedent that would reshape pack law for generations. But the victory came with a cost. The strain of exposing Garrett's crimes had pushed Alara's gift to its limit. She had reached so deep into his memories, pulled forth so many hidden truths, that something had cracked inside her. The visions came constantly now, day and night, an endless flood of information she couldn't filter or control. She saw a child drowning in the southern rivers, a warrior betraying his alpha in the western mountains, a healer poisoning patients to steal their inheritance, a merchant beating his daughter in the eastern trading posts. She saw everything, all at once, and it was destroying her. Matthias found her in their chambers, curled on the floor, hands pressed to her temples, tears streaming down her face. "Make it stop," she begged. "Please, Matthias, make it stop." He gathered her into his arms, holding her while she shook. "Mira!" he shouted. "Now!" The healer came running, taking in the situation with one practiced glance. Her gift is consuming her. She's opened herself too wide, and now she can't close the door. How do we help her? I don't know. I'm not a pathfinder. I don't understand how the gift works. Mira's expression was pained. We need someone who does. Matthias's mind raced. There was only one person he knew who might have answers. Elder Senna, the reclusive pathfinder who lived in the sacred grove 3 days north. She had trained his grandmother, had lived for over a century, and had not left her grove in 50 years. "Watch her," he told Mira. "I'm going to get help." "Sire, the roads are impossible this time of year." "Then I'll run them as a wolf." He kissed Alara's forehead, whispering against her skin. "Hold on. I'm coming back with answers, I promise." He shifted and ran, covering in hours what would take days for a human. The sacred grove was hidden behind veils of old magic, but Matthias had been there once as a child, and the path remembered him. He shifted back to human form at the entrance, calling out respectfully, "Elder Senna, I am Matthias crowned in winter, and I beg your aid." Silence. Then a voice, ancient and patient, seemed to come from the trees themselves. "I know who you are, young king. I have been expecting you." Elder Senna emerged from the grove like a memory taking solid form. She was impossibly old. Her skin like carved wood, her eyes a silver that reflected nothing. But there was no frailty in her bearing, no weakness in her presence. "My mate," Matthias said without preamble. "She's a pathfinder, and her gift is consuming her. She opened herself too wide, and now she cannot close the door. I need you to teach her control, or she will die." "Yes," Senna said simply. "I know. I have seen her in my visions for 3 moons now. The Barren Omega, who will reshape destiny." She gestured for him to follow. "Come, there is much to discuss, and your mate's time grows short." In the heart of the grove, surrounded by ancient stones carved with symbols Matthias did not recognize, Senna explained what Alara was facing. A pathfinder who opens without boundaries becomes a conduit for all truth, all pain, all knowledge in the world. It is drowning in an infinite ocean with no shore. Senna's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing weather. "Most do not survive the breaking, but your Ilara is strong. She has something to hold on to, you. That may be enough." "What do I do?" "Bring her here. I will teach her to build walls, to choose what she sees and what she ignores. It will take time. It will be painful. But if she survives, her gift will be greater than any pathfinder in 3 centuries. Senna fixed her silver gaze on him. "But you must understand what this means, young king. A truly trained pathfinder cannot lie, cannot hide from truth, cannot be bound by conventional morality. She will see things that will terrify you. She will know secrets you would prefer remained hidden. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Matthias said without hesitation. "Liar." Senna's lips curved in something that might have been a smile. "But you will be prepared by the time you need to be. The goddess does not make mistakes." Matthias returned to the fortress with Senna riding behind him, the old woman moving with the supernatural ease of someone who existed partially outside normal reality. They found Ilara barely conscious, burning with fever, her mind fragmenting under the weight of 1,000 truths. Senna took one look and began issuing orders like a general commanding troops. She had Matthias carry Ilara to the tower, then demanded isolation. No one but him and Mira for the next 7 days. What followed was an ordeal that tested every fiber of Matthias's faith. Senna taught Ilara to visualize her gift as a vast library, each truth a book that could be opened or left closed. She taught her to build walls of intention, to filter information, to choose what she needed to know and what was better left hidden. But the teaching required Ilara to dive deeper into the visions, not escape them, to face every terrible truth until she understood its shape and could contain it. Matthias held her through the worst of it, listening as she wept over a child she had never met, grieving for strangers whose suffering she could perceive but not prevent. "I can't save them all," she sobbed. "I can see them dying, and I can't save them all." "No," Matthias said gently, "but you don't have to. You only have to share what you see with those who can act. The burden of action belongs to them, not to you." "But I know." "Yes, you know. And knowing, you have already done more than anyone else could." He held her tighter. "You are not responsible for saving the world, Ilara. You are only responsible for being honest about what you see in it." On the 8th day, Ilara emerged from the tower transformed. The fever was gone, the wild panic in her eyes replaced by something calm and centered. She moved with new confidence, and when she looked at Matthias, her gaze was clear and certain. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For believing I could survive this. For going to find Elder Senna. For holding me when I thought I was breaking apart." She took his hand. "I can feel the walls now, the boundaries. I can choose what to see and what to leave alone. It's like learning to close my eyes for the first time." Matthias pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, grateful beyond words. But relief was premature. 3 days after Ilara's emergence, a messenger arrived bearing news that would shatter everything they had built. The message came sealed in wax, bearing the marks of the Western Kingdom's royal house. Matthias read it in the privacy of his chambers, and his expression turned to stone. "What is it?" Alara asked, feeling the sudden shift in his emotions through their bond. "War," he said quietly. "The Western King claims we have violated territorial agreements by appointing a new alpha to Ashwood. He's mobilizing his armies and moving toward our borders." Alara's blood went cold. Over a pack leadership? Over an excuse. Matthias crumpled the message. "He's been looking for justification to expand his territory for years. This is convenient timing. What will you do?" He was silent for a long moment. "I could defend, hold our borders against invasion. We're strong enough. But thousands would die, and in the end, I'm not sure we could win against their numbers." He turned to face her, and she saw the terrible weight of kingship in his eyes. "Or I could negotiate, offer concessions, prevent war through sacrifice." What kind of concessions?" "He's demanded that I surrender the new Ashwood Alpha and return to the old territorial boundaries, which would give him control of the southern timber routes." Matthias paused. "And he's demanded you." Alara went very still. "Me?" "As a diplomatic hostage, to ensure our compliance and to prove the good faith of the agreement." His jaw clenched. "He knows about your gift. He wants a pathfinder in his court. You won't agree to that. If it prevents war, I may have no choice." The words seemed to cost him everything. "Alara, I can't condemn thousands to death to keep you safe. That's not leadership. That's cowardice." Alara's mind raced, feeling the true shape of the problem through her gift. "He doesn't actually want me," she said slowly. "He wants insurance that you won't move against him. A pathfinder would make you predictable to him. He'd assume I'd warn you of his plans, so he'd have to move openly. It actually weakens his position to have me." "Then why demand you?" "Because he knows I matter to you. Because he knows that separating us will weaken your resolve." She gripped his hands. "Matthias, what if I go willingly?" "Absolutely not. Listen to me. If I go as part of a peace agreement, I'll be valuable. But if I go as a hostage, I'll be just another prisoner." She could feel the shape of her future unfold through her gift, multiple paths branching into different outcomes. One led to war and death. Another led to something else entirely, something that required her to be brave enough to walk into danger alone. "I'll use the time to learn his weaknesses, his true plans, his vulnerabilities. And when the moment comes, I'll send word back to you." "No, I won't lose you." "You won't lose me. I'll find my way back. I always do." She pulled him closer, pressing her forehead to his. "This is what my gift is for, Matthias. Not just seeing truth, but using it. Trust me." He held her at arm's length, searching her face. What he saw there, whatever certainty radiated from her, finally broke through his resistance. "If you don't send word within 3 moons, I'm coming for you," he said fiercely, "and I'll burn the Western Kingdom to ash to get you back." 3 moons, she agreed, "but I'll need to send word sooner. I'll need your help." The agreement was made in secret. Matthias would formally surrender to the Western King's demands, offering concessions and agreeing to the hostage exchange. Alara would go to the Western court, but not without preparation. Senna taught her additional techniques, how to mask her gift, how to appear weaker than she was, how to plant subtle suggestions in people's minds without them realizing they were being influenced. "Your gift is not just about seeing truth," Senna explained. "It is about understanding the shape of what people need to believe and helping them believe it." She smiled that strange ancient smile. "Use that carefully, child. The line between guidance and manipulation is thinner than you think." The day of the exchange, Alara dressed in formal robes of state, a queen's clothing that marked her as valuable. Matthias held her one final time, outside the gates where the Western King's emissaries could see them together, but not hear their whispered words. "I love you," she said. "I love you," he replied. "Come back to me. Always." As she rode toward the Western Kingdom, Ilara felt the connection between them stretched thin but unbroken. Through their mate bond, she could feel his anguish, his faith, his absolute conviction that this would end with her return. She clung to that certainty as the familiar mountains fell away behind her. The Western court was everything she had feared and nothing like she expected. Beautiful and cruel, cultured and savage. The king a man of contradictions who smiled while making decisions that destroyed lives. Ilara was given rooms in the palace, treated with courteous formality, and watched constantly. But she was also given access. She attended council meetings, festivals, private audiences. She listened and observed and saw the truth beneath every lie. The Western king's plans were more ambitious than Matthias had suspected. He wanted not just expansion, but conquest, the complete absorption of the northern kingdom into his territory. But he also had weaknesses. A trusted general who disagreed with the expansion strategy, who could be persuaded to defect. A daughter who loved the northern culture and would influence her father if given the right incentive. Ambitious nobles who would rather negotiate than fight. Fractures in the foundation that could be exploited with the right pressure. On the night of the full moon, Ilara used her gift to send a vision to Matthias, a shared dream that crossed the distance between kingdoms. She showed him everything: the Western king's plans, his vulnerabilities, his daughter's secret sympathies, the general's hidden correspondence. When she woke, she felt Matthias's response like warmth spreading through her chest. He had received it. He understood. 3 days later, the Western king received a message. His daughter had escaped the palace and was making her way to the northern kingdom, carrying documents that proved the Western king's violation of multiple diplomatic treaties. His general had submitted his resignation and refused to command troops against the north. His most ambitious nobles were quietly withdrawing their support for the war effort, and a message came with it, written in Matthias's own hand. "Return what is mine, and we can still negotiate peace. Keep her, and I will give you the war you seemed so eager for." The Western king raged, but he had been outmaneuvered. Without unified support, and with his plans exposed, war had become untenable. He released Ilara with barely concealed fury, sending her back to the northern kingdom under escort. When she finally saw Matthias riding toward her on the border, she felt the mate bond flare like a sunrise. 3 moons and 1 day, he said, as he pulled her from her horse into his arms. You were cutting it close. I told you I'd find my way back, she replied, laughing through tears. In the months that followed, the Northern Kingdom and Western Kingdom negotiated a genuine peace, one based on mutual respect and the recognition that both would be stronger together than divided. The Western King even named his daughter as heir, a girl who would eventually grow into a queen with Ilara as her trusted advisor and friend. But the greatest change happened in the Northern Kingdom itself. Ilara's actions had reshaped pack law. No longer could Omegas be exiled for barrenness. No longer could gifts be hidden and feared. Young pathfinders began coming to the fortress, asking to be trained, and Senna established a formal academy for those who carried her gift. Matthias's kingdom became known not just for its strength, but for its wisdom, its justice, its willingness to see value in those others had cast aside. And in the tower where once a broken king had wandered alone, there was now laughter, warmth, and the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. One night, as they stood together on the ramparts, watching the stars emerge above the frozen peaks, Matthias turned to Ilara and asked, "Did you ever see this ending when you were chained to that pillar?" "No," she said, resting her head against his shoulder. "I couldn't see anything but the cold and the end. That's the gift and curse of prophecy. We see fragments, never the whole picture." "I'm glad the goddess sends me to that storm," Matthias said. "I'm glad I found you." "I'm glad too," Ilara whispered, "because I think I finally understand what the goddess was trying to teach us both." "What's that?" "That redemption isn't something we earn through suffering. It's something we find in each other, that broken things can be mended not by erasing the cracks, but by filling them with gold. That a barren omega and a grieving king can become whole by choosing to be brave enough to love. Matthias pulled her close, and under the infinite sky with the moon shining silver on the snow-covered peaks, they were finally completely home. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.